Bye. My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Duck Dogs. I am your host, Josh Miller. And before we get rolling here, I want to, as always, make sure that we give a shout out to the partners that make this show possible. So let me run down them here. So Eukanuba is the presenting sponsor of this show. Eukanuba, the blend of food that I personally feed, is Sport 3020. We've also been using the Puppy Pro at the kennel, and specifically Whitney, because she's more tied into that, has nothing but great things to say about it, and she would love to answer any questions you have if you have any. So Eukanuba, both Sport 3020 and Puppy Pro. So go check them out, www.eukanuba.com. Thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Gun Dog Supply is your one-stop shop for all of your hunting and training needs. A little inside behind the curtain here is that I've had a number of conversations with the Snell boys recently just about how to better serve their audience. They're actively thinking about this, and I think it's really, really neat that they take such pride in this. So go check them out, www.gundogsupply.com. Also, thank you to Sitka Gear. I'm actually currently testing out, literally on me right now, a new article of clothing for them that I can't disclose, but what I can tell you is that it is years that they make sure their quality is tested and their products are put through the ringer. And I cannot say enough good things about their products. So www.sitkagear.com. Also, thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck is your 5-star crash test ready kennel, both in the intermediate and in the large sizes. So no matter where you travel or how you travel, as long as your dog is in one of those crates, you know that they are in the absolute safest condition that they can travel in, period. So go check them out, www.luckyduck.com. And, of course, last but certainly not least, thank you to Retriever Thank you. Let's try this again. Thank you to Retriever Roadmap. Retriever Roadmap, although I can't say it apparently, is my online training program that helps you train your dog at home. I have a lot of my approaches, my methodology, my drills in there, and I've shared all that with you so that you can be successful at home training your dog. So go check it out, www.retrieverroadmap.com. So I certainly hope everyone is off to a fantastic start to the week. Hopefully my speaking struggles don't continue here for the rest of the episode. Otherwise, this is going to be a long episode for me. But I'm excited today because we, this week, have been doing more filming here at the kennel for Retriever Roadmap. A lot of you listeners out there have taken advantage of getting onto Retriever Roadmap and using that program, and really appreciate all the feedback that you guys have given. Sounds like you guys are loving it, which is awesome. But what's fun about this to me is that it's an ever-growing library. So we start to hear feedback, we start to hear questions, we start to hear where people are wanting more, and we go do it. And when that happens, that means that Mr. Brett Ayers comes up to Wisconsin, spends some time with me. We spend probably way too much time together as we are up early, up late, and we're trying to knock out as much as we can while he's here. But because he's here, I always like to bring him in because he always has some cool insight that we can be blessed with. And it seems like he has a couple dogs that a few people out there like to stay in touch with. So, Brett, thank you for taking the time today to be back on Duck Dogs.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to come up here and hang out and watch you work your dogs and gather more content for Retriever Roadmap, and of course, just the camaraderie that you and I share, and get to hang out, and your family and your kids, and it's just during the day it's a lot of fun, but I really love the evening times because your kids, they're just a ton of fun, and they for whatever reason have kind of taken on to me, and love roughhousing with them and playing with them and doing all that fun stuff. So it's always a pleasure to be up here.
Yeah, they love Mr. Brett, that's for sure. So what's really fun about this is I have a couple topics that I want to talk about here today, and I think it's very timely that you are here because I'd like to get some of your input. I feel like sometimes I'm a little monotonous as I go through, I'm always talking. I have nobody to bounce stuff off of. I don't have the conversation piece all the time, which, man, I've been really tempted. I may get a little more into that. The problem, with me is always my schedule, as you have seen.
Oh, yeah.
Over the years you've seen it.
Yep.
But it gets to be so difficult, because as much as I like to think that my day is planned out, all it takes is, a couple phone calls, a couple urgent emails, a dog that, isn't feeling right, and then all of a sudden my day is completely shot. And so doing things such as scheduling gets very tough. Of course, we schedule appointments, for clients to come out and things like that. But, scheduling times to have phone calls, to do your recordings, very difficult. Oftentimes when people send in or they message in, want a phone call to talk over something with their dog, they're like, hey, can we schedule a time? Well, not really, because I don't want to fall short and not keep up with my end of the bargain as far as the time goes. So it does get very difficult. As much as I love to be a planned person, I've learned to kind of roll with the punches. So, because of that, it's always been very difficult for me to jump in and say, hey, I'm going to bring somebody on as a guest, or I'm going to talk. So when you're here, it's always nice because we can carve out that time. When Whitney's here, it's nice because we can carve out that time. But we'll see. There's always room, for flex in there. But I believe last time you were on, if I remember correctly, were we talking about Deuce?
We were.
We were talking about Deuce. So in case people are listening that haven't been staying up on the podcast, tell us a quick little rundown about Deuce. Like not where he is now.
Right.
More kind of recap what we talked about before.
For sure. Yeah. So Deuce is a 3.5-year-old dog that back in March, Josh had reached out to me and basically said, hey, man, I have a client, he has a pup of ours that's having some issues, that needs a new home. And, this was on a Saturday. And, at first, with Timber, and I have 2 older dogs, I just didn't think it was the right fit for me. So rolling into Sunday, my wife and I were out to dinner. If people remember the last episode, we were having some margaritas. And I got a text message from you, said, hey, man, listen, do you have anybody that has, that wants to take this dog in? And again, I hadn't mentioned it to my wife just for the fact that I figured the answer was no, just because of our situation with 4 kids and 3 dogs currently. So I mentioned it to the wife sitting there, and I should call her Kim, just not the wife, but my wife, Kim, sitting there at the Mexican restaurant, and said, hey, Josh has a client that is needing to rehome a dog, 3.5-year-old male, Brock puppy. And she looked at me, she says, why not us? And I'm like, are you serious? And so long story short, that Sunday night, I got in contact with Josh. I called him back up, said, hey man, I found a owner or, a home for this dog. He goes, oh great. Who is it? I said, me. And I remember him going, are you serious? So like, yeah, 100%. So he put me in contact with the owners who were out on the East Coast, and I had a conversation with them trying to feel out what was going on. He was having some aggression issues, and it was just one of them things where I was like, okay, we'll work through this, et cetera, et cetera. He just needs a new setting, and we'll be good to go. I know all the puppies. I have a Brock puppy myself, or a dog now. She's 3.5 as well. But, so we drove Monday over to PA and met him, part of the way, and picked up Deuce. And our first introduction together was not the best, I guess. When he first got out of the truck, the previous owner was obviously emotionally tore up because, he had this dog for 3 years. And, anybody that has a dog from the puppy stage, you just get emotionally attached to them. And he was visibly shook up. And so the transaction was pretty quick. And we got Deuce loaded in the kennel, and he's like, "Hey man, can I have my leash and collar back?" And said, "Yeah, sure." So I reached in, and Deuce didn't like that. He got a little defensive and he growled at me. So fast forward, like I said, we got him home, and he's been very good since then. So we've had a couple small issues. If anybody listened to the last podcast, I just want to get too in detail of it because, it's telling the story all over again. But, basically the dog had behavioral issues and we're trying to figure it out. And, so, that brings us to where we are today. And he's definitely a different dog.
Well, so a couple things that I think are important to reiterate here from the last episode. So one, this dog, although we were being told it had aggression issues, this dog was also one that we had heard nothing but how great this dog was for 3 years. And then all of a sudden this happens, right? And so, of course, I go through my checklist between, is there an injury where the dog's not feeling right? Is there a illness? We've had dogs before that all of a sudden start acting super, super goofy. And there was one in particular. He wasn't one of our dogs, but he was a dog that we had trained. So naturally, the owner reaches out and like, "Hey, like we're seeing this goofy thing. Like, any ideas?" I'm like, "No." Went to get checked out. The dog had a severe urinary tract infection, which was making the dog very uncomfortable. Which meant like when people went to go pet him, he was getting defensive, right? And so like all these things go through your mind. Well, so we knew that there had to have been something because you don't love the dog for 3 years and all of a sudden this stuff happens, right? So something happened. Yep. We don't know what happened, but something happened. Yep. And so trying to, especially when, you're taking the dog from a blind situation, how do you flip that Rubik's Cube around to where it all makes sense, right? So that was probably the toughest part of the whole thing, right?
100%. Yep.
So kind of walk us through where he is today, because how long ago was that?
That was in March. So, he's been at our house, what is it? Going on, I guess, 4 months. Mm-hmm.
And the big thing that we had identified was his crate.
Crate.
What was one?
That was one, yes.
He was super defensive around his crate.
Right, yeah. So when I got home, like I said, listen to the other podcast. When I got home, like I couldn't get him out of our van. So I pulled in the garage, shut the door, just obviously a new situation, older dog, didn't want him to run off through the neighborhood, not come back because he does not know me. We met for literally 2 minutes in a parking lot. Then he was put in a kennel, and we drove 5 hours back home. So I opened the back hatch, reach in to let him out. He starts growling at me. So holy cow! And then Josh is on the phone the whole time. My wife comes out, making fun of me because I'm a big wuss to let this dog out. But he's like showing me his teeth, all aggressive and everything. So anyhow, we get him out. Everything's good. Have a couple small issues, and I'm literally leaving in 2 days to drive up here to Josh's, and we were going to go to the Pheasant Fest. So, knowing that there was a kennel issue, I put Timber, because Timber was in heat at the time. I put Timber in the kennel, in the cab. Deuce he rode shotgun with me, and drove 10 hours. Actually, it was almost 11 because Chicago traffic was a nightmare. And I get a mile from Josh's house, and this dog wakes up. I look at him. He looks at me, and I reach over, and I had petted him many times in this 11-hour drive, and he growls at me. I'm like a mile from Josh's house, and we just spent 11 hours in the car together, and now all of a sudden he's just like, "Yeah, I don't like you." So,
and in that situation, we had identified that he was asleep, had just woke up, probably disoriented, new place, new people, and was defensive.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, 100%.
And so, like, across the board, we realized it was a defensiveness situation, right? Because I don't want to run down like the whole last podcast, because I think it would be really cool for people to go back and listen to it.
For sure.
But the dog's defensive, specifically around the crate. I mean, even my first interaction with him was he went to go do something. I went no, and he got defensive, about me.
Correct.
And the other thing was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was men.
Yes.
Right? Like we never saw an issue with women that I can recall as far as being defensive around them.
He loved my wife.
Yeah.
When we first brought him home, he took to her over me.
Yeah. And loved Whitney right away when we got.
Correct.
Right.
Now, according to the previous owner, it was the opposite. He was more defensive towards women than he was men. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But, let's fast forward to today. Totally different dog. Learned a lot about him. I know that, he hasn't gotten, let's say, aggressive, but there are times when, you just need to let him go and let him come to you. So, for instance, when he sleeps, he's probably the deepest sleeper that I've ever any dog I've ever seen. Like I can get up and walk away from him. He doesn't even bat an eye. Where Timber and my other dogs, they wake up and want to follow me wherever I go. But if you startle him, he just gives that little look of uncertainty. And but he's never done anything. It's just like, okay, bud, but then he comes over to you. So, but from that first interaction that we had to today, that I am that everything to that dog. He follows me no matter where I go. When I work, he lays at my feet all day long. He wants attention. He loves to give me what I call hugs, but I don't mind the jumping up as much with him just from, the situation, but every once in a while, he'll jump up and he gives you a big hug. He's super cool with the kids. He hasn't had, hardly any issues. And, obviously we started training him and, he's a totally different dog. He's at home right now. And my wife, I had went away for the 4th of July with a few of my kids, 3 of my kids, and my wife stayed home with the dog. And all I got was Snapchats all day. It was like how buddy they were. And, that he just, following her around and, he just, I don't know, man. He just, it's almost, he just needed a friend. Mm-hmm. That's, I don't know the situation, he was in previous. I don't know if he lived in a kennel, 90% of his life, if he was a house dog. I don't know any of that. But what I do know is that he's now part of our family and he is one of the coolest dogs. I love his personality. I love his drive. And, like I told you on the last podcast that he's going to be something. And I really see the potential in this dog. Really do. He's got a bunch of potential. Obviously, he's got the bloodline. There's some things that we're working through. And with an older dog, it's just taking more time than it would with a puppy.
Well, and so there are a couple of things I think is really neat about this whole thing. We can dig into this a little more, especially now that we know he's working out or he has worked out, right? Because before when we had this initial conversation, we didn't know.
No idea.
It was kind of up in the air.
Right.
So with this, a couple of things that I really appreciate. One, and probably the most significant, is that if it wasn't for you, this dog is probably not on this earth today.
100%.
Yeah. Not probably. He's not.
If I didn't pick him up on that Monday, he was going to the vet that Monday.
Okay, so it blows my mind, and I'm just going to be a little blunt. We haven't used names, so we're not throwing anybody on the bus, right? But what blows my mind is that here's a puppy that we knew what the potential was because, I mean, you had physically seen multiple of his litter mates,
yes.
right?
Literal litter mates.
Literal litter mates, like not siblings, the next, breeding or whatever, like the literal litter mates. Yep. And they're big teddy bears, big drive, like not the push on you dog at all, right? So like for me, having worked with all these dogs, like I'm having a hard time even fathoming what it is that is being described, right? And so I'm like, well, I know what the dog is capable of, but I think this is a prime example of we need to appreciate how our actions and the environments that we put our dogs into, it really does have a significant impact on what the dog turns out to be. You can take a very, very well-bred dog, a very natural dog, mishandle them, and have issues.
Right.
On the flip side, you could have a dog that is maybe weak in areas or maybe not as well bred, but because you put in the time, the dedication, you handle the dog the right way, the way that that dog needs to be handled, and it's going to look like a great dog, right?
Yep.
And so many people get hung up on which one of the litter that I pick and like which puppy I take home, and it's like at the point that you're at the litter. And now it's just like, hey, here are the 4 boys of the litter, and you get one of these 4 boys. I'm telling you, man, it's a lot, if not everything, the environment that those puppies are going into. And so this was a prime example of that, And again, what was mind-boggling to us is that, okay, so for 3 years, this dog's the best dog in the world.
Right.
And then overnight, this changes, like something happened.
Right.
We don't know. We will never know.
Yep.
But what we do know is that you've now got him over it.
Right.
And what's really neat is that like watching now, like the video updates that you'll send as far as like, what he's doing, like he's starting his bind retrieve work, he's honoring, he's doing all these things that like we did never know if you'd ever get there. Right.
Yep.
So that is really fun, for me to see. But I do think like at the end of it, when you start looking at dogs like this, and we treated this like a rescue dog, if you will, right? Because we didn't know what happened. Just like when you get a rescue dog, you don't know what happened previous. Even if you get it from somebody that's like, hey, this is what's going on, you don't know all the details, right? Like, and naturally speaking, let's just use the example. If somebody beat the snot out of a dog and all of a sudden the dog's defensive over that situation and they rehome the dog, they're not going to tell somebody that they beat the snot out of it and they were the issue, right? Like people's egos get in the way and will not disclose that information. You will never know that. But then the second that you grab a broom and the broom is what the dog was beat up with, and all of a sudden the dog gets offensive, you're like, whoa, what the heck? So you really had to go into that with a much different approach than what you had with any of your other dogs, having these dogs from puppies.
Yep.
And man, I think I am super proud of the way you've handled this whole thing, just because of the fact that like we didn't know what this dog would ever be, let alone to where you have him today.
Right. Yeah. He's, we can go right back to the kennel. So our first, identification of some of his issues was a kennel or a barrier between, like, it could have been my back door. I have a glass back door. And when I first brought him home, he did not like the fact that there was something in between us, and he got defensive about it. But now he's to the point where he loves his kennel. We started feeding him in his kennel. He when I work him, he goes in his kennel. He doesn't ride in my cab. He rides in his kennel. And as soon as I open up that back door, and it could be just to let him out to go to the restroom, that dog runs to my truck, circles my truck. It's a routine every single day. He runs, circles from the front end to the rear end, goes to the door where that kennel's at, because I have a kennel in my back seat, and will look at me, look at the truck, look at me, look at the truck. And, obviously if we go work, open the door, he gets in, loves it, never says a peep to me. I could pet him in it, where before there was no way I was sticking my hand in that kennel. He has changed tremendously. And where his training is I started from scratch, not knowing obviously this dog's hunted. This dog has had many birds in his hands from, he hunted on the East Coast, had, like I said in the previous podcast, more black ducks in his mouth than I've shot in my lifetime.
He had retrieved hundreds and hundreds of birds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then he did some pheasant hunts. The previous owner went to some club and did some European pheasant hunts. So this dog had hundreds and hundreds of birds, if not thousands, in his mouth. And, so I knew there was training, but right away, I started with Retriever Roadmap and started on the foundational work, because there was some foundational work that just wasn't up to, my standard. And, that could be from sitting, and me walking away and him wanting to move, which he was really good at that. Where he struggled was his heel. So we spent a lot of time on lead working on his heel. That dog loves to retrieve. So we first started out doing some simple marks with him because I'm just trying to test this dog out, where he's at. Then we started getting into lining and baseball, and we started seeing some struggles. And we spent, I think I just told you today, it was almost 3 weeks just on right backs. The dog loved to spin left. And every time, I'd cast him right, he spun left. So what I did was I started cheating him to my right. So what I would do is if dog's at the pitcher's mound, I'm at home plate, I would take, at first when just to test him, I'd take 3 or 4 steps to my right, toss a bumper, and then he would still want to spin left. So then I would go even further. And, I got a pretty long ways away until, we finally got him spinning to his right. And then I slowly worked my way back to home plate. And now at this point, I am back at home plate and I am able to cast him right or left. And he's taken those casts, to the right or to the left. So when I raise my right hand, he's spinning to my right, his left. When I raise my left hand, he's spinning to my left, his right, back to second base to pick up a bumper. And then, we meet back at the pitcher's mound and start all over. So, we just dedicated a lot of time to that. And just recently, especially with Timber, because Timber's farther along than he is, I didn't want to stop her, where the progression of where she was at just because of him, because like he's still in the field where Timber, she has most of her field work done. She's ready to move on. So I needed to get her in the water. Never seen this dog swim before. So, we started doing some watermarks and 2 launchers and worked on honoring. We worked on honoring in the water and in the field, and he's really coming around. But like I told you today, I still don't know if I will hunt him this year. Even though this is a dog that's had, many retrieves, I just, I want him to be where he's at. I know he's capable of it. He's shown me he's capable of it. And, so I'm still on the fence if I will hunt him this year or not. We'll see. But he definitely, he has it. Like I said, I've seen his litter mates work. I've helped train his litter mates when I was here a few times. I've taken photos and content of his litter mates. I know what they're all capable of. And obviously I have, basically a sibling to him, with Brock being the same dad to my female and Deuce. And so, yeah, it's just, it's been a fun process. Definitely, like I said earlier, it's a little slower process, just trying to break some of the habits, I guess, and, get him to where, that I'd like him to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what I think is interesting. So I've talked a lot about, redshirting a young dog, not hunting them until they're ready. Right. And I think from the feedback I've gotten, that people that buy into that and they follow through with it, they see the results and they see the why. I also believe if people are like, I know I should do it, but I'm not going to, that they later on see the why. They have now the hurdles they've set in front of themselves, but they see the why. What I think is interesting about this is you are taking a dog, that he, like you said, has had hundreds of retrieves, but they're not the retrieves your standard as far as, being steady, the way that you want him to handle. And I think you have to go even slower with that dog, because it's going to be so easy for the dog to revert back to the bad habits once he's in the situation again.
Yes.
And so I think it's really, really interesting. Again, different approach. Slow is the name of the game with him, across the board. Yep. And so here I'm kind of bringing this full circle into kind of the topic that I want to talk about today, especially because of the videoing that we've done here the last couple of days. It's very fresh, and you've literally watched it firsthand. Yep. Is flipping failures. Because, like we're talking about in this case, a dog that was hours away from being put down.
Yes.
And now is being very successful. That's flipping a failure, right? Now, I will argue that's not Deuce's failure. Like, again, I just don't believe a dog goes from being fantastic to terrible overnight and all of a sudden, going to the extreme. Right. So there was a failure somewhere. Deuce was the repercussion of that failure, and you have now flipped that failure into something very positive.
Yes.
Right. He's likely laying on the couch with your daughter right now.
100%.
Right. So this is where flipping this failure, went. So I want to talk about flipping failures because I think there's a time to stop and put the dog away. And I think there's a time to say, hey, we need to get over this and get through this. Okay. We've had so much feedback of people asking, tell me how to read a dog. Like, there's not a magic notebook that tells you, hey, do this, this, and that. And then, it'll all of a sudden all make sense to you. Right. It needs to be done in live time. It needs to be understood through time and repetition of doing it. Right. And we can't give you all the information. Now, through Retriever Roadmap, we have a section there that we're breaking this down and hopefully helping, guide people on how to read dogs better. But it's also, it's also not the cure-all to everything because each dog is so different. So, for example, when is it time to quit? So today, I quit. When I say quit, I don't mean I gave up. I quit the session. So I had a day today that was so mind-boggling. So I had my entire advanced class, without exception, all acted like knuckleheads today. Every one of them. I had the whole trailer full that literally, Brett can attest to this, watched yesterday, and they looked like rock stars. Every single one of them, as they have been for the last 7 to 10 days. Today, they acted like half of them didn't even know their name. The other half acted like they didn't even know what we were doing, even though it was literally the same drill we had ran the day before that Brett watched them crush, right?
Yep.
So what in the world? Okay, so here's my theory on this. When I start going, I'm pulling my hair out going, this doesn't make sense. Like, you're off. Let's put you away because I don't want to, one, get frustrated. I feel like I'm pretty, pretty slow to that point, but I don't want to get frustrated. I don't want to make a correction that is going to make you nervous. You've been doing so good. Let's just stop, right? That way you don't get into a bad habit. I don't get frustrated. We're going to stop. Okay. But you start doing that to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dogs, something's up, right? Like, what's going on? So tomorrow is a full moon. So here's my theory on this, because we've seen this now multiple times. If you're a hunter, if you're a fisherman, specifically big game, big species fish, so for me, I'm a big archery hunter, love whitetail hunting. You talk about moon phases, you talk about increased activity, you think about, deer making mistakes that they don't usually make, right? Like, you think about, this is the time I need to be out there. Same thing with fish. So I'm literally, after we get done with this, I'm literally going to take Brett muskie fishing for the first time, right? This is like my thing. I love doing this. But we look at moon phases religiously because on these moon phases, fish get more aggressive. They eat more. You can target these big fish, and you can make these big fish eat more often on moon phases. So why do we look at it with every animal except for dogs? Right? And I'm not saying except for dogs. I just think we humanize dogs enough. Like, I promise you, you work with people long enough, like, you go to a retail store and you tell them that there's a difference between a full moon crowd and a crowd that's not. Like, people are affected by it too. These dogs are affected by it. Well, here's what's crazy, and this is the comment I made to Brett earlier. If I just owned one dog, and my dog was off today, I'd be going, what the heck? Right? Like, wouldn't even think about that it would. But because I had so many of them and it was consistent, something is up. Okay? Now, I'm not saying throw the towel in on moon phases and do all that stuff, but I think it's super, super interesting. And I think it'd be super interesting to dig into and actually get some science behind this of, like, is this, something to really look at and how to affect it, with training. I don't know that, but I do know I don't believe in ironic situations very often. And this certainly is it. You're going to tell me that all my advanced dogs were off after being how good they've been now it could be me for sure, right? Maybe I was off today. Maybe the dogs were reading off of me. Maybe, who knows? But I just find it too ironic to think we're coming into a full moon. Everybody's goofy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just too much.
Yeah. I want to throw in there because I've witnessed it firsthand, the last couple of days. Today's Wednesday. I came up here on Sunday. Monday was our first full day. So Josh, has his advanced dog. He has work he has to do. So he runs his advanced dogs. We actually captured some more 5-point stuff on Monday. And there was a dog, Monty, in particular. Mm-hmm. Dog went right around the horn, crushed it. Monday, Tuesday, right around the horn, crushed it. Today, first send, he got halfway out on the line. All of a sudden, he veered off. His nose took him wherever he was going. And, he had some mistakes from there. He blew off a whistle. It was just like, holy cow. Where was this dog yesterday that never missed a beat? And it was like that for every single dog.
Not one dog.
Not one.
Not one dog was like they were yesterday.
Right. Yes. I mean, it was crazy from what they were, and that's where the conversation, with Josh and I came up because I'd watched these dogs, 2 days prior crushing it till all of a sudden, the first one, okay, maybe something's going on. Okay. Now the second one, the third one, and then the fourth one. And you're just like, what is going on? Because these dogs were just nailing it, and now they're not. Mm-hmm. So I literally looked at you and I was like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. What do you think? And just because I love to pick Josh's brain about stuff like this, I'm like, well, what do you think's going on? And the first thing out of your mouth was, man, there's something about the full moon.
There just is.
Yeah.
I wish I had more scientific proof behind it. But again, I don't think you can say deer, elk, muskies,
right.
We can't say everything's affected humans, affected by the full moon, 100%. But dogs aren't, right? Like there's something there. Yep. So that was an example that I had about quitting, right? Because if those dogs are not themselves, and there's something like Monty, for example, this dog looked like a dang all-star. Mm-hmm. Like I even made the comment to Brett yesterday that I think I could go put him on a cold blind and he would do it right now.
Yep.
Like that's how good he's doing. Yep. And then for him to act like his ears are off, he doesn't understand what we're doing, he's going to sniff, be out of, like what in the world?
Right.
Like, and this was a dog that looked like a dang all-star.
Right.
So there's something there. But I think often that's people's go-to reaction when stuff doesn't go right. Just be done. Right. So I want to talk about a couple situations where we flipped some failures. We got this all on film.
Yep.
We are going to use it in Retriever Roadmap because it is fantastic footage, and it is a great way to show people not only the drill and what we're doing, but throughout Retriever Roadmap, our go-to situation has been we're going to use a dog that has not done this before so you can watch it go wrong. I mean, anyone can use a finished dog. I could use Brock to go teach you how to do on-lead obedience. Right. It's going to look perfect. It's not going to look perfect for you when you teach your dog. You're going to get frustrated. It doesn't make sense, right? Let's use the dog doesn't know what they're doing. That way, hopefully, we can show you how we would work through it, right? So, same thing here. In this first situation, we had a dog named Augie that we were working on. Okay, he's running 5-point. He's doing his lining. Now let's go to the water. He's never done this before. Now we'll start teaching him to run a blind and take a line in the water. The first send that I had was a complete train wreck. He's all over the place. He's wanting to cheat on the way back. Excuse me. He had no control whatsoever. He looked like a complete noob, like he had no idea what was going on, right? So, same situation on the surface, right? Okay, he looked like that today, too.
Yep.
He hadn't up to this point,
right.
But he looked like it today, too, just like everybody did. But he looked like it in the water. Now, I didn't say, well, we're going to quit in the water because I know this is new to you. We need to teach. We need to learn, right? So we take a step back. We do a few things that get you going in the right direction. And by the end of that session, he looked fantastic.
Incredible.
In one session.
Yes.
Right? Yep. So, the flipping failures, I think, is a big thing that we should kind of dig into. So how do we do that? And the big thing here is we need to read the dog and the situation and say, how do we make them successful? The second situation we had was we were trying to show, because this is one thing I feel like we do a really good job on Retriever Roadmap, is giving you different options to get the same task done. We understand that people are going to be different in their approach. They're going to be different in the opportunity of property that they have to work with or lack thereof, the tools that they have, the opportunity of time in which to do it. No, we're just not the same. None of us are the same in our situations, right? So I want to give you as much as I can to get make you successful. So we are now doing lining in big water, right? So hypothetically speaking, you don't have a pond to train on, you can go to a public boat ramp. You can go to maybe a park where they have a big lake. Like, you can do something like that. Let's figure out how to get it done. In that session, what I wanted to show didn't work, right? What I wanted to show was my ideal way of doing it, but my ideal way of doing it didn't work. It worked for a little bit, and then the dog panicked and came back into me. So I had to, he threw me a curveball. I had to combat it. Okay, now because he did this, let's try this. Okay, that didn't work. So because that didn't work, let's try this. Oh my gosh, we got it. Again, by the end of the session, we were doing it great. But at the beginning, we weren't. And so, there's something to be said about these failures and not throwing in the towel and persevering through it, but doing it in a way that is not insane. What I mean by that is, don't do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again and expect a different result. I mean, unless I'm mistaken, that is the absolute definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? So this is, again, why, going back to Retriever Roadmap, why we want to give you different options. This didn't work, try this. That didn't work, okay, try this one. But you can, in the moment, read your dog, read the situation, say, hey, this didn't work, so I'm going to pivot because I watched the dog do this. So I have an idea, maybe I can try that. There is no 1, 2, 3 ABC of doing this. And this goes into the reading the dog part of it that I think, if I were to be very honest, can be frustrating at times. Because so many people reach out to us, whether it's via social media, via email, via phone call, and they all want me to be able to walk them through, here's what's going on, fix it. You know how difficult that is? I don't know you. I don't know the dog. I don't know the training. I'm not seeing it firsthand. I don't know what the dog's been through. I don't know where your goal is. I don't know, like there has to be some ownership here as far as I'm going to be able to be creative. Right now, the best part about programs, not just Retriever Roadmap, but like it, is that it gives you the base knowledge of what this should look like. And then once you have the base knowledge, you should be able to pivot off that if you need to go be successful. But it was really interesting. You got to see a number of failures and how we got through it.
Yep. Yeah, no, even when Blaze and the big water blind, I knew you had a plan, and then you turn around and talk to the camera, but you said, all right, he just threw me a curveball, so I'm going to throw him a curveball. And to watch him, the next step was the same thing. You said, okay, now he threw me another curveball, so I'm going to throw him another curveball. And then by the time that session was over with, he was doing exactly what you wanted him to do. Mm-hmm. And watching that accomplishment and watching you progress through it, that was something special.
Mm-hmm. So here's what's interesting to me. So as you guys know, if you follow this podcast at all, Brett's probably sick of me saying this stuff, but I love sports analogies because for me, it just allows me to understand the situation. Okay. So if you're in a training session and your dog throws you a curveball, okay, you are up at the plate expecting a fastball because that's what you're wanting to hit. That fastball comes, you hit it out of the park, home run. Right? That's what all of us want for each training session. I go up there, I have a plan, I have an idea, I'm going to get a fastball, I'm going to put a great swing on it, it's all going to go perfectly, home run, hoorah, right? That is an ideal training session. But when your dog throws you a curveball, you don't have to hit a home run. If you just foul it off and stay alive, right? You're staying alive in the at-bat. That's a win. And as long as you can keep fouling off those curveballs until you get the pitch you want, and when I say the pitch you want in this situation is you watch it click, you can make the connection with what the dog is struggling with what you can do to make him successful, that's the win. Like that's the ultimate at bat, right? That is the one that when you're done with it, you're actually probably more proud of it than you are the one that just goes completely as planned.
Yep.
Because you did this together. And I think it's intimidating at times for us to go through that because we don't want things to go wrong. Like I think I've talked a lot about failures here, especially in recent weeks, because we've just seen so much of it. I have failed so much in the last few weeks. Failed with sessions, failed with clients, failed with dogs, but as long as I don't fail at the end, like failure is a part of the process. Whether it's life, whether it's business building, whether it's, marital relationships, whether it's dogs. Failure is a part of the process, and you can either embrace that or you can try to avoid it the best you can, but it will not work out for you in the end. Embracing the failure and saying, what can I do better? What can I learn from? Most professional trainers that you talk to that are successful, they will tell you about the dogs that taught them more than they could teach the dog. That didn't come from being successful. That didn't come from walking through all this stuff and making it all easy. It came from them failing, them as the dog, and the owner then having to figure out how to make the dog successful. And oftentimes for me it was Easton. I don't have a choice to fail, right? Because, fail as far as like, I can't let this be a failure because I can't afford another dog. At the time, I'm living with my mom and dad. They won't let me have another dog. We have to get over this. That makes you hungry. That makes you want to push. That makes you look at a hurdle and not look at it as a brick wall, but rather something that is obtainable. It's a speed bump. Let's not hit it going 100 miles an hour. Let's slow down, hit it going 15, and we'll get out the other side safely, and then we can keep on the smooth and narrow. Failures are a part of this process. And I promise you, if you have not trained a dog, if you're starting this process, you will fail. Deal with it. Yep. If you're in the middle of it right now and you are failing right now and you're pulling your hair out and you're frustrated and you're banging your head against the wall and you don't know, like, maybe my dog doesn't have it, maybe I don't know what I'm doing, it's cool. Take a breath. It is amazing when you write things down and you say, okay, here's what's going on, and you write it down and you reflect on it. We have had multiple people in the Retriever Roadmap community write a question about, hey, I'm having this problem. Write it out and describe it. And before we can even answer, they go, oh my gosh, by writing this out, I realized what I was doing wrong. Before we could even answer, right? It's crazy. Sometimes that self-reflection is a huge part of this thing, but failure is a part of it.
Yeah. Own it. I know you talk about it in other podcasts, but I was listening to Extreme Ownership audiobook on my drive up here. And
it's a great book.
Great book. And one of the last chapters I got to was very similar to this situation. And, if you haven't read the book, but basically Jocko and what's his name?
Leif.
Yeah. Leif, they talk about, war situations, and then they put it into a business situation. And in this particular chapter, there was a business that was failing. And so they were hired to come in and to consult to try to flip this business around. And the one particular manager would not own up to the fact that he was making failures, which was failing his team, which was failing the company. And through it all, going back, talking to the owner of this business, saying, hey, this is what, through the consulting, this is what I've found out. This is who I think, we need to work on. And that particular guy was given another chance, but still would not own up to his failures, and ended up, in the end got released from his job. But I guess feeding off of what you're saying is, when you are failing, don't be egotistical about it. Own up to it. Realize that, okay, I am making a failure, and realize that, you are going to make failures, just like you said. Own up to it, and come out the other side, on working through it. So it's good stuff.
Most of the owners that we find that elevate to be like the best handlers, more times than not, when they start the process with us, they talk about, and almost word for word will say, I know that I'm the one that's going to hold this dog back.
Yep.
That sounds like a knock on yourself. That sounds like a put down. That sounds like maybe we're giving too much to the dog, right? No, that's you understanding that you may not be the best person to coach this team, but you have to coach it. So because of that, what can I do to be better? Because to your point, we get so wrapped up in ourselves that sometimes it's hard to step back, look at the big picture and go, oh my gosh, like if I did this better, if I was more open-minded, if I understood the other side of the fence, if I saw there's so much there that if you do some self-work, you make the team better. And the team being, your dog, because your dog is looking to you for leadership the entire time, right? That's a big piece of this. Extreme ownership. So I obsess a little bit about that book because I love that book so much. So I start my year. So I love reading. To be honest with you, I take that back. I hate reading. I really do. I hate reading, but I've learned to love it because I've understood how to make myself better because of it. I love reading books that are going to help me, get through or maybe take the next level or the next step in my life. And so extreme ownership is one that really hit me between the eyes of, if you're going to lead, there are certain things you need to do, right? Now, here's what's cool about this to me. So I didn't get this from the book, but because of the book, so let me finish, I guess, what I was saying. I start every year, January 1, I reread that book every single year. That's how impactful it's been to me, and that's how impactful I think it could be to you. If you extreme ownership, Jocko, go follow Jocko too. Like the dude is really good at what he's. But through following him on social media, I picked something up the other day that I thought was really neat, and I think it really resonates with the dog, side of things. So he had talked about, if you are struggling, right? Like if you are like, I need to do better, I need to elevate myself, I want to be better, right? The first thing that you do is when your alarm clock goes off, you get up. Right? Because that's the first promise that you are either going to make or break yourself for the day. So that alarm clock goes off, you get up. You don't hit snooze 4 times. The second you hit snooze, you broke the promise to yourself, right? I'm going to get up at blank. No, you didn't, right? So, but this is where I struggle, because all the time people call me and they're like, hey, I need some help, I need some advice. Like, I don't need a dog to be as good as yours. Okay. Well, what he said hit me with this too. He goes, I get up at 4:00 every morning. That doesn't mean I'm telling you, for you to be successful, you need to get up at 4:00. You could get up at 6. You could get up at 8. He's like, heck, you could get up at 10. But when your alarm clock goes off, get up. Like, that's really good stuff.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Right? And it's so simple, but it's like these little things that build. And again, all the we're doing here for our dogs is we're being leaders, right? So let's learn to be better leaders, right? And how you're going to be more confident, how you're going to be a better leader, is you start fulfilling the promises you make yourself first. Like, that is a pure success secret for successful and self-confident people. Self-confident people, the first thing that they do more than anything else is they keep the promises they make to themselves. That's a way easier thing that's said than done. There are a lot of excuses that can be made out there, right? But that little thing right there, when your alarm clock goes up, get up. That is big stuff for a lot of people. It was for me. I was terrible at it.
I'm raising my hand right now. Snooze is my friend. I'm a 1, 2, 3 times hitter.
Oh gosh.
But now I'm going to rethink that.
Yeah.
Because that's a great way to look at it.
So when I heard that, it had to have been somewhere around the first of the year because I have not hit snooze all year. And here's what I have found. I have found that I have more energy. I have found that I am more focused in the morning. I don't feel like I'm running behind. I don't feel like I'm rushing. I have found time to enjoy a sunrise. I have found time to read in the mornings rather than trying to cram it in somewhere else during the day. And I've just found that I feel better. Now, that's me,
Yep.
right? But it is something that, so you can actually do this on an iPhone. Don't know if you know this or not. You can take the snooze option off.
Really?
That's what I've done. Yeah. Now, you screw that up and you're in trouble.
You're going to oversleep.
Right. You're in trouble. Now, I have done that. I have hit it. And for whatever reason, so this was early on, especially because I was bad. Like I'd hit 2, 3, 4 times I'd hit snooze, right? And it was one of those things that's like the first time you hit it, you just, for some reason, you just think you're hitting snooze. And then you start going, you have that like, what the heck happened? And it's like way later than what you think it is and you scramble. But it's the routine of just, hey, I made this promise to myself. I'm going to follow through with it. I'm going to get up. It is so simple, but it has helped me tremendously.
Yeah, that's great. And that reminds me of the other book, and that's the general, I can't think what it's called off the top of my head, excuse me, but the one that the very first thing that you do in the morning is you make your bed.
Yeah. That's, oh my gosh, I have the book. I don't think it's right here.
Yeah, I can't think what it's called, but like,
Oh, it's called Make Your Bed.
Make your bed.
Yeah.
You're right. So yeah, the very first thing that you do in the morning is, it's all task related, is the first thing you do is make your bed, because if you don't make your bed, then you've already failed for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And you've accomplished something.
100%. When you
Right?
make your bed, you've already accomplished something.
Right.
So, and that just mentally gets you off on the right foot. So good stuff. I mean, I've always been kind of a self person. My mom was a she always staying positive and, looking at things, and, it's easy to get down. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But all these self-motivating books and all this stuff that, I've really started reading because of you, has really opened my eyes to like, wow, it's changed me as well, so good stuff.
And you are a naturally, I think, you're a naturally happy, self-reflecting person to begin with.
Right.
Like that's one of the things that drew me to you from the get-go, was that you're someone that always is looking to get better. Right. And so for me, so you talk about your mom and you talk about how like that paved the way for you to be that, and you always think that way.
Right.
I'm not. So like my family is actually very opposite of that, right? My family is like, whatever I say is right and everybody else is an idiot. Very ego driven, right? Like decisions and opinions and everything are made on ego. And I have had to consciously work to not be that, right? Because we talk about genetics and dogs and how different traits naturally fall through. I mean, I have fought that, and I've really tried to be intentional about not allowing that. And I believe that it has made me a better boss, a better husband, a better father, a better friend, a better mentor, to my clients that are looking to me for dog direction, because I'm trying to be that better person.
Yes,
we can all get better, right? So that self-reflection is a really big deal. But you have to be intentional about it, at least for most of us. For me, I really have to be intentional about it because I'm so fearful of falling off that other side, which is what my family has showed me, right? And I'm not saying that like I love my family. I'm not saying that sure. I don't, but it is something I've identified as something I need to be sure on, and books like this, like Extreme Ownership, is a really good one. And then the follow-up of that is The Dichotomy of Leadership, which I think is another really good one. Like the David Goggins one, I think is actually really good too. The Can't Hurt Me.
Yep.
That's a really good book too. Like we could go on and on about these books. I'm reading one right now that I'll fill you guys in on after I'm done with it. But it's called The Power of One More. And Ed Milet wrote this. And Ed's one of those guys that I've listened to a number of his speeches. I listened to him on his podcast. He's one of these guys. He's very articulate and can understand how to talk about what he's thinking. He's very motivational, but he's not the guy too that like some of those guys are like, do it this way or you're an idiot, right? Like he's also not that guy. And his background as far as like what he went through in his life early on is super, super interesting. But he talks about a lot of things. Like I talked about, the thermostat thing that I talked about here a couple of weeks ago. That was from that book, right? And so I'd encourage anyone to go read that one. That one's been a really good one so far. I'll fill you guys in on what I think of that here as we get to the end of it. But again, this is like all we just talked about. It all relates directly back to the dog side of it, because I talked recently, a number of messages now are like flooding into my head of specifically on social media, the people that have reached in. So a couple of them really bounce out, which is, there was one guy that sent in, he's like, I'm hoping you can help me with my dog. I'm struggling. He just can't figure it out, and I was like, well, like, okay, let's break this down because, and I've gotten to the point I'm just being more blunt. I just am. Like, I'm just being more blunt. Like, I used to be so nervous about, like, how
You're always blunt to me.
Yeah, that's different. I know that you're not going to take it personally. It's like, especially when, like, a lot of people, I have no idea who they are, right? And so when they reach out to me, I've always been super like, hey, let's be super kind. Let's be super nice. Let's tiptoe around things. Like, I've found more and more that people appreciate bluntness. Right. So I'm just going to be blunt, right? It saves us a lot of back and forth and a lot of you pussyfooting around. So, this guy's like, my dog is really not getting this, okay? And so just like, man, like, I think a good question, just reflect on, is the dog not getting it or are you not teaching it well? Right? And when he came back, he's like, no, the dog's not getting it. I'm like, no. Like, that's the wrong answer. Yep. Right? Now, the dog may not be getting it, but it's likely because you are not teaching it well, right? And like, he just could not fathom, like I watched this thing on YouTube and this is how it said to do it and my dog's not getting it. And so I'm just frustrated. I'm like, okay, like your dog may not speak that language. Let's find another way to do it. And he just could not. So this is why the self-reflection part of it is so good, because for me, I have many employees. Well, just because I communicate with one way doesn't mean that that's the same way that the other one's going to connect with in a way that I can get the most out of both of them. The dogs, like you have watched here, like my advanced group right now is all over the map between, super fiery, athletic to more methodical and more chill and laid back to super puppy to super mature to like all over the place. Right. Like, I don't have a cookie cutter that I'm trying to fit all of them into. It's literally changing every single time. Like, how I communicate with them, how they communicate with me. A great one is how they communicate with me. What's really neat, we'll talk about Jake. So Jake is a dog that he does something to me that I've never had the experience that I've understood anyway, of how he tells me he's locked in. So a lot of times when you line a dog up for a blind, you tell him dead, you line him up, you put your hand down, your dog has to tell that they've got it, like they're locked in. A lot of times it's ears perk up, maybe a lean forward, maybe a stiffen of the body, like okay? Jake will do all of that, but he won't have it. And the only way that I know that is by looking at his tail. If his tail, he's a happy dog. His tail. I mean, if you ever get caught in a rainstorm with Jake and your windshield wipers don't work, it doesn't matter. You just sit him on top of the car. He'll clean it off. Like, he's just happy. So his tail's always moving. As soon as his tail stiffens and just stops, stiffens, he's got it. Like, I will literally, this is no joke, I can say dead. He can be on a line. He looks great. He looks perfect. I put my hand down. I'm watching his tail. I could sit there for 15, 20 seconds and it's pop, 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 and then all of a sudden, whoop, he's got it. I'll go back, boom, gone. But we have tried this, and we actually did this on video, if I remember correctly. Yep. I sent him when his tail was still going. He looked, if you didn't look at his tail, the whole rest of his body looked dialed in, and he like jumped around like, what? Yep. It's like, okay. So we, excuse me, how we communicate with them, how they communicate with us. Of course, we can't make them better communicators, but we can do a better job ourselves. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. I didn't want to blow your eardrums out. I have something in my throat.
Too many raspberries?
Yeah, too many. Yeah, we got caught. We were going down to we have a lake on our property. And on the way down to the lake, my grandfather, who we talked about today, I am extremely thankful to still have in my life. He's been a huge impact of mine for a lot of reasons. I won't dig into it, today. But we are going down there, and he's just in his own little world. Literally have a side by side running with a dog trailer, all hooked up. We're literally right behind, like a foot
on his
behind.
bumper.
Yeah, and he's just in his own little world, eating raspberries. I mean, he's just and so it made me stop and go, maybe we should have some of these raspberries too. And I mean, just like appreciating these little things. It's really a cool thing. But
Back to Jake.
Back to Jake. Yeah, I mean, so he communicates with me in a different way, right? So I need to communicate with him in a different way than I need to communicate with Blaze, who's very pop, 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 go, go, go. He's going to push on me. He's going to, but he's that flashy dog, right? Different than Monty, who's more methodical, super laid back. If I even look at him sideways, he thinks the world's coming to an end, right? Like, I have to be a better leader, a better communicator, dog to dog, person to person. That's dog handling, right? So I know we talk a lot about self-bettering, self-reflecting, but that's a big part.
Yeah,
it really is.
That is awesome. And just to relate, or just not to relate, but just to go off of that, and it was funny because Josh had mentioned to me the first day that he ran Jake. He's like, watch him, and his tail, yes, wag 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 wag. Son, if he wasn't on it, no heel. Would line him back up, wag, 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 stiff, back, and that dog was gone. Every single, mark. Once that tail stiffened up, boom, he was gone. It was fun to see that. And then, other dogs that in this class that, like he was saying, have these indicators that they're locked in, and just to be able to read that. And, I know I've said it in the past, but that's one thing that I really, really respect you as a dog handler is your ability to read dogs and, pick up on things like that maybe most people don't, and
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's, I've said that from the get go, but
well, so here's what's interesting about Jake. I'm going to throw his owner on the bus a little bit because of the truth. So his owner, like when I tell him that, okay, he's like, so you mean I have to look at his tail every time? Like it's an inconvenience.
Right.
Right. And I'm like, if you want to know what's going on, yeah.
I would.
Right?
100%.
Right? And this is where whoever the driver is or whoever the coach is or the captain of the team, however you want to put it, you are a significant part of this team. And oftentimes you dictate, are you successful or not? So in a situation that they are out hunting, he lines them up, tells them back. He's now looking at his tail. Jake doesn't understand what's going on. Okay. Now, normally in a professional sense, this is where I get cussed out because I'm the one that trained the stupid dog that doesn't know what he's doing. No,
right.
You're not reading it, right? That dog is capable. That dog knows what he's doing. He's telling you everything he needs to tell you. You just need to be able to understand to receive it. Something a lot of us, myself included, can get better at. One of the things you're really good at, Brett, you're a great listener. You really are. Like when I have a conversation with you, you are dug into it. Right? I am trying to get better at that because I feel like I do a poor job at it. I think a lot of us do a poor job at it. But in this case, like the dog is telling us everything we need to know. We just have to be open enough to be able to accept it, absorb it, and read it. Yep. Right? So I guess for some reason, I didn't even realize that I always throw out challenges, to you guys on a weekly basis. But my challenge to you this week is to dig in and read your dog and find something that you didn't see before. Is it a way that he tells you that he gets it? Is it a way that he tells you he's frustrated? Is it a way that he tells you that he's unsure? Is it a way that he tells you he's happy? Is it like there's got to be something you're missing because you're just not watching detailed enough? My challenge to you is go find one thing this week, one thing that they're telling you and talking to you that you didn't see before. Because I think if you can dig in and find that one thing, you're going to find more than one. And it's really going to help you as a leader, and it's going to help you communicate with your dog that much better. So we're going to go fishing.
Let's go fishing.
We're going to go fishing. It's been a long week. This is going to be awesome. Hopefully we can get a fish in the boat for Brett. So
I'm excited.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So full moon made the dogs crazy. Hopefully it makes the muskies crazy, and we can go put a couple of fish in the boat. But appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the week. Enjoy it. Enjoy your time with your dogs. We are halfway through July, which means next month is August, which means next month is September, which means a lot of us will be hunting. It's coming up quick. Make sure you dig in, get your work done, go make progress, and go get better today. Have a good week, everybody.
See you, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.